Hello, and welcome again to The Goddess in Art. This series is dedicated to the creative power of the goddess. My name is Starr Goode, and my guest this evening is Hallie Iglehart Austen, who over the last 15 years has been conducting workshops and rituals on the goddess. She is also the author of 2 books, including the recently published Heart of the Goddess, which is this book right here. Welcome to the show, Hallie.
Thanks, Starr.
I wanted to say that in reading your book, the deepest sort of single most impression that I came away from is the way the book conveyed the sense that the goddess is alive. And I don't mean it in some sort of vague cosmological sense, oh, the spirit is alive, but just this, the sense, I mean, I had the sense of behind this work is like your years of research and also your years of work as a priestess and the ritual that you put behind it. And, you know, like the thing that I think the readers look at first, of course, is the artwork, you know, because there's over 100 illustrations. And I have to say that of all the books I read on the goddess and looked at, this has the finest illustrations. I mean, they're very impressive. And because of their quality, you can really just like sink into them. And I mean, you can count the 13 notches on the horn of the Venus of La Salle if you want to. So it just really gives you that quality to sink into, and also there's, you know, it's set up so that you have the text, and in the text you have, accompanying each picture, you have the myth, and you have other information, but also the book is really a practical book. It's a book for use, and for me, the heart of the goddess are the meditations that you set up for us. To you have like all these different goddesses, and it might evoke a particular life situation that you want a particular energy in. So. You know, and you can call upon that, and you really give us this practical tools to use what you call a direct transmission from the goddess. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about how you structured the book, or what, you know, your intentions were in the way you created it.
Yeah, well, certainly I'm very happy that my intention succeeded with you. That was certainly my intention, because to me the goddess is very much present in my life. And as you say, 15 years of practice and teaching and being a priestess, it's very interesting to bring her alive through the medium of a book. And yet I was really, I was certainly supposed to do this book. I tried to avoid doing it, and I was certainly supposed to do it. Yes, I did. I tried giving somebody else the images and said, here, you do it. But it kept coming back to me in a variety of ways, and I'm really glad I did it, because it helped bring the goddess more into my life. And so I know that I can tell other people that if they use this book, if they look at the images, if they say the prayers, if they do the meditations, if they listen to the myths, the goddess will come more and more into their lives as well, because that's what happened to me in the process of doing the book. And certainly after 15, 16 years, I thought I knew a lot about the goddess, and this was certainly an intense process. So hopefully I can share that with other people. More immediately, why I did the book is that for a long time I'd had some slides that I used in my classes when I was teaching them. I'd start off people with, you know, their history, the art of the goddess. Yeah, right. And no matter, you know, what my mood was when I was getting ready to teach these classes, after arranging the slides, after looking at them, I'm sure you've had this experience, I felt so much better. I felt healed. And so what I've learned from this is seeing is healing. Just looking at these images is very healing. And people have told me they look at this book before they go to sleep. They look at it when they're upset about something, as well as to be inspired and just to have fun or to use for art projects or whatever. So I really wanted to share that direct experience of the art, because that's very immediate for me, and I'm so happy that my publisher was able to put my vision into reality, because I really wanted the color to be great. I wanted it to be fantastic, so people could get what I got when I looked at the slides that I had. And I do have to say, I now see more details of some of the art that I've ever seen before in my own book, which is really wonderful.
Yeah, because some of the things, I mean, naturally some of these I'm familiar with, some of them I have never seen, because you do have contemporary artists too. But I saw details in things that I had never seen before, and that really did make it alive. And I also want to say that the book isn't that expensive. I mean, you could expect to pay $100 or something for this kind of quality, and it isn't like cost prohibitive, that you can just use the book. And as soon as I got the book, I just started randomly doing almost like readings for myself. Like I would just like open the book and do a reading, and it would just really key into what I just really needed to hear.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, I was just with a circle of women who I had never been with in a circle together, and they had the book, and they said, can we do readings with this? So we closed the circle by asking a question and then opening the book to whatever goddess was going to give us guidance for that time. Another important part of the vision for me was that it be cross-cultural, that it include all the cultures of the earth and all the peoples of the earth and all the not all the goddesses, because I couldn't in this format, but to really have a balance between Native American, European, African, and Asian, and include Oceanic as well. Because to me, that's part of what our times are about right now, is learning from the richness of all the cultures and maintaining that integrity. But I really feel very strongly we need to learn from all the cultures if we are to survive and to thrive too. So I was really happy to be able to get a real wide selection.
You really did, and a lot of people have gone through the book with their images that they had never seen before. I mean, and you go prehistorical, contemporary, worldwide, and both ways, like ancient in the past too, of like, Aborigines or whatever, so it's all over the world. One thing that always really interests me is this question of language. I mean, you call the book The Heart of the Goddess and the World's Sacred Feminine, and it's sort of like, what is the feminine? I mean, it's a very kind of treacherous water. I mean, is the feminine Minoan Crete? Is it the Middle Ages? Is it women, fighting in the Persian Gulf? I mean, it's often, it's a cultural construct, and often, because we do live in a patriarchal culture, it's often to suppress women. So, what is the feminine? And you do address it in your book, so I'm just going to put it to you. Who's the goddess? What's the feminine? Who is the goddess,
right. Well, I think it's really important to know right off that we're talking within our cultural construct, as you said. And so, to me, the goddess and the feminine is whatever our culture has put onto that, because we need to use the language of our culture in order to communicate.
Exactly.
So, it's also the goddess and the feminine is the missing half of our heritage. It's the missing half of our values. And she does incorporate that nurturance, the peacemaking, the co-creativity, the love of the earth and emotions and of the body. So there's the traditional, quote, feminine that we've put onto that. And then also, of course, when we tap into cultures that aren't so dichotomized, we get the power and the strength, the fierceness, the aspects of the dark goddess. But it's really important, I think, to remember, and I really emphasize this to people, these are human qualities. And a Native American writer, Jamaica Highwater, really articulated this for me, because he was in a conference where people were going, masculine, feminine, masculine, feminine, and he stood up and said, you have to understand from a cross-cultural context, what you're saying doesn't make any sense. To Native Americans, you're sitting here saying masculine, feminine. It doesn't, these are human qualities. So this is what I feel, they're human qualities. We've lumped a whole bunch of them onto women and the feminine, and then we've put them down, and we've put all the people with those other qualities in power. So the men are supposed to be aggressive and warlike and all this stuff, so we put them in power. We need to bring it all back together so that we can be human individually, and so that we can have a more human society, more human culture. So in order to bring back all those others, I talk about the goddess, I talk about the sacred feminine. But it's more than that. The goddess is all of life, as far as I'm concerned. And I use the term goddess and sacred feminine precisely because those words have been omitted when we talk about the sacred. So it's just all to come back in balance. So it's complex, but as you say, it's tricky, and it's really important to me to say these are the missing values, and they're human values and qualities that we all need to bring back in. And I say that we could emphasize the goddess for the next few hundred years and come back into balance. Just only focus on the goddess,
You're right.
and we'll come back to human.
Gloria Ornstein recently wrote a book, The Reflowering of the Goddess, and she brought up a very interesting point. And one of the ways she addressed this idea of what is the feminine is that she looked at it in terms of creation myths. Is this, what is the cosmogonic, central image? Is it of a female creating cosmos, creating life, creating culture, or is it the central image like a war god, a god in the heavens sending thunderbolts or violence or whatever, that you can really pin a culture by its central creation myth, and that for women and as artists, and you have a lot of women artists in this book, contemporary artists, it's this sort of idea that if you can have a central creation myth of a female giving birth, the mother of all, then it's this embodiment of creativity, and not just creating life, but again, creating culture, creating art, and that was sort of her definition of sort of matristic feminine, that it was that central image of a female creating life.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And also of the connection, that we are all the goddess's children.
Exactly.
And I talk about the myth of Spider-Woman, where we're all connected to Spider-Woman by a thread from her web to the top of each of our heads, and that we always have that connection, even when we forget about it. We just need to open up to it. So that we're all connected, and we're all part of life, and we get much more energy when we remember that we're all connected.
Or that all these aspects they are inclusive. You talk in your book about Artemis, or who's the other one? Sedna, I don't know if I'm saying that right, the Eskimo mermaid goddess. And it's sort of, even though like in Artemis, you'll see her as the huntress, still she protects the young. Or Sedna was a goddess of nourishment. But if they hunted the young, or if they hunted too much, she would bring them back in balance. So it wasn't sort of like you have Jesus over here, or the devil over here, these absolute goods and evils or something, but rather a blending of all of it.
Yeah, and that is a really important point, this unification, this wholeness, which is what we're more moving towards. And that's, you mentioned about the book being called The Heart of the Goddess. I wanted to do a book that was not just about the history, not just about the theory of the goddess, but that was about the visual embodiment of the goddess, and is the heart, the meditations, is the prayers, the inspiration, is the myths, the stories that we hear. It's to bring that back more into our daily lives.
One of the, it seems to me that always it comes back to the cosmic yoni. I mean, the cosmic vulva, the creation, this portal, the gateways to life, and just what I was referring to as the central image of the goddess creating all life. And here we're in this culture where the women's bodies are denigrated. But you had a very fascinating section in what you called the open goddesses, which maybe the most well-known are the Indian goddesses, the yoni, or again the vulva. And the Irish Sheelanigigs, who are very rude goddesses, who are like, are spread and opening their vulva, and it always seems to come back to this image, and what you were calling open goddesses, or I might call like the power of display, the power of showing those goddesses. And I wasn't familiar with the goddesses from Oceania, or I think you had from Australia, and just Africa and all over the world. These different images of this. What I think it always comes back to in terms of our cosmology of the goddess is this central image of the yoni.
Yeah, it really is. And the gateway, a number of those ones that I have in the book are actually on doors or over entranceways. The one from Micronesia is this open-legged goddess, very displayed, and she's over the doorway to the men's ceremonial house. And I've seen photographs from other men's ceremonial houses in Micronesia where the men, to get to the sacred objects, have to go through her legs to get to where the sacred objects are, and then they get the sacred objects for the ceremonies, and they have to come back out through her legs. So it's a constant reminder of where we come from. And it's a constant reminder of life, too. I think that's really important, of the preciousness of life. One thing I'm reminded of is that in the Iroquois nation, only the women could decide when to go to war.
Really?
Because the women are the ones who bore life and knew the value of life. And I think that this reminder of the preciousness of life, the Tibetans say that, being in a human life is a very precious opportunity, and we need to take care of it and take advantage of it.
And also to that, again, that image of it, of the sacredness and the power of it. I was, when I was looking at your book, reminded of Miriam Robbins Dexter's recent book, Whence the Goddesses, and she had a story which I hadn't heard of, and it's from an Irish myth of the young hero. Cuchulainn wanted to make war on his people, and so the king, what the king did is he ordered, it was 3 times 50 women down to the river, and what he did is they displayed their boldness. So they lifted their skirts and displayed their boldness, and the young hero just collapses into his chariot. He cannot fight the war. He is just overwhelmed by the power of the display.
And so wonderful that he recognized the power. Yeah.
Well, I think it just overwhelmed, swept over him.
Yeah.
So I thought that was sort of an interesting imagery of that. Or even in some of the myths that you bring up, like Amaterasu or Demeter, again, it's sort of the sacred erotic dances that both of these goddesses are in caves or they're mourning and they're underground. But it's the vulva, that imagery that brings them back to life.
Yeah, yeah, and also the erotic too. I mean, certainly the vulva is an expression of the erotic, which is part of all our bodies, all our lives, and that's the life force as far as I'm concerned, and that's what the goddess celebrates, is the life force.
And sort of the flip side of that, this idea of it being a doorway of, you know, the portal to come into life, and also there's a lot of imagery of the womb as tomb, and you bring up in the book that, you know, 60,000 years ago, over 60,000 years ago, I mean, we're talking Neanderthals, that they buried, there's evidences of them burying their dead in a fetal position. So already there's a sense of ritual, or returning to the womb. And one of, I found the most touching illustrations in your book was the Egyptian goddess Nut in her imagery of birth and death and rebirth, which was, it was a sarcophagus, and the lid of it is this image of Nut with her arms open and bare breasts, and the woman who is buried, when the coffin is closed, she is going to be looking at the mother. And it's sort of this idea that, you know, we're born into this world and there's a mother taking care of us, and in the next world there's going to be a mother there. And I found that really quite striking.
Yeah, yeah, I love that one too. It's really one of my favorites, and what a different way to think of death.
Yeah.
Actually going back into the goddesses, to the breast of the mother and into her open arms. It's so, it sounds very simple, but it's so basic.
Well, it's a lot better than eternal suffering in hell.
Yeah, and
I'll take that.
Sure, it's a lot better, and it's also a lot better way to be living your life, because if you live your life in fear all the time, of course you're going to create a lot of suffering here on earth. But if you live your life with an understanding of death, a healthy understanding of death, then you're going to live much more in harmony.
Yeah, and it's just that idea of that nurturing, that it's going to be there and take you into whatever this next cycle of being is.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of cultures that have the goddess in the tomb, the welcoming back towards the next cycle of life, whatever that might be, however people conceive of that.
Right, I wanted to just take a little break here and look at some, we've been talking about the visuals in this book to let our readers have a treat of seeing, our readers and our viewers have a vision of some of the images that are in your book. So we're going to take a little break here and watch the slides. Okay, we're back with my guest, Hallie Iglehart Austen. I wanted to, just in the few minutes we have left, talk about some of the last images in your book. The last image we just saw was this grandmother moon, a very striking image of an Indian woman holding the full moon, and that's almost at the very end of your book. And there's this sense of the grandmother, the mother of the mother, and these traditions of the elders and the wisdom, and that's really what your book is a lot about, is this traditional wisdom and making it alive right now. And I was thinking that today as we film, it's the 13th, it's the dark moon, it's Ash Wednesday, we're in the middle of this war, and so there's all this tumult going on and this mystery, and things are turning on themselves. And sort of your sense of what we're witnessing here, or what are these transitions?
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely amazing to me that certainly in terms of the war that's going on right now, and in other situations too, it's really focalizing many of the problems that we have on the planet right now, the environmental, even the origins of this war are environmental,
Exactly.
poor energy policy, and situation of women, violence, war, all of it. So I think many of us maybe were expecting this to happen at some point, but it's like all right in front of our faces right now, and it's an incredible challenge to stay awake and conscious.
Expecting what to happen?
I think well, we know all these things are going on in our culture. We know, and that there's a daily war on women. There's a daily war in the ghetto. There's a daily war on the environment. We know that's going on, but we sort of, in order to just keep going, we push it back to some degree. So it's suddenly right in front of our eyes, like really magnified. So to stay conscious and really looking at this and stay awake, by awake I mean not numb out to it, is a great challenge, but it's also very empowering. I've certainly found that, and I see working with the people that I've been working with, when we allow ourselves to express what we're feeling about it, because what it seems to do is to ask that we make whatever our personal next leap is, to increase our commitment to ourselves and to the planet, to peace. It's been phenomenal to me how much people's hearts have been opened in the face of so much pain and suffering. So we're seeing encapsulated a lot of the work that needs to be done, and if we let ourselves be awake, it wakes us up more. It gives us more energy. And in terms of the grandmother, I mean, Paula Gunn Allen, I said, has a Native American scholar, says that the grandmothers are coming soon, and we need to be ready for them. And I think that's really what this time is about. I don't mean to sound sort of apocalyptic or anything like that, but it's certainly an energy that's coming back to the planet and needs to come more and more. And also the Hopis and the Tibetans have old prophecies saying that this is a time when it can go either way. It can either go into destruction or into the new world. So it's very interesting that these two very powerful spiritual peoples who honor the goddess very much have this awareness. So there's something really phenomenal and empowering about staying awake, seeing what needs to be done, still loving life and loving one another and doing the work.
Well, I think what you said just really ties into the very last image of your book, which is an African goddess holding the world in her lap and a rainbow. And this painting that I brought by the artist Doug Welch, the contemporary artist, it was just by a coincidence. It's the same sort of imagery. It's an Indian woman, Mosa, holding the world. There's a rainbow. So, and the last words of your book about a rainbow and building a new world.
Yeah.
So I thank you, Hallie, for inspiring us and giving us practical use in your book to help us build that new world.
Great. Thanks, Starr.
Thank you for watching, and good night.
in my